Another Sunday, another case of the Scaries to start your work week. Welcome to the newest edition of the Sunday Scaries, where we have all your gore, lore, and more, covering all the latest horror happenings, slicing open all the latest horror news, and dissecting it bit by bit, finding all those juicy innards. Pour that cup of coffee and turn on your fright light while we take you on a tour of terror. Another week in the horror community, and we just are fresh off of the new M. Night Shyamalan film, Knock at the Cabin, which it's a little bit. Our review is up on the channel, and I'll
hmm
say we were pretty pleased with it.
Yeah, no, definitely a different change of pace for M. Night for sure. I was pretty pleased with that. Again, he does a couple things that, are out of his wheelhouse when it comes to kind of your expectations for an M. Night Shyamalan movie. So I quite enjoyed that. I thought it was very decent, a little bit more drama heavy than I was expecting. And yeah, just overall very satisfied with it. I think it's definitely one of his better ones in the last few years.
It's definitely got me more excited to see what he's coming up with next. Because after seeing Old, I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna make time to see the next M. Night Shyamalan film. But then, the trailer came out, seemed pretty good, and then I gotta say, so I'm a little more pumped, I would say, to see what next M. Night Shyamalan film we have in store. But
Oh yeah.
a jam-packed week, I think, in horror news. We kind of had a little divvying up of deciding what we were,
What we were
because a
going to
lot of stuff
cover,
coming
yeah.
out this week.
Yeah, definitely a lot. So why don't we dive right into it? With the
Let's do
first
it.
story being here, and I'll knock some of these thingies off. But yeah, very, very happy to see this. But director Damien Leone teases an upcoming horror movie with Sam Raimi's Ghost House Pictures, which is super cool. I think if there's any place that he's going to end up, Ghost House is definitely an interesting production company. I mean, obviously, he comes from kind of do-it-yourself DIY horror filmmaking, just as Sam Raimi did. So I think that they share a kinship there. But Ghost House has made some interesting flicks. I mean, not every single one is a banger, but they do have a lot of good stuff. Like they behind things like Crawl, and like if we just pull them up real quick, Drag Me to Hell, of course, which is you know um, Sam Raimi again. But yeah, I mean, if you look at their little repertoire here, we've got a lot of winners. Don't Breathe. Again, that's another good one. They were behind Evil Dead Right. Okay, now we're going back here. So 30 Days of Night was great. Drag Me to Hell was great. Evil Dead, the remake. But then, I'm not going to lie, like, Don't Breathe is great. They do have a lot of questionable films, I would say, here with things like, I know a lot of people like The Grudge and things like that, but I mean, we're talking 30 Days of Night, Dark Days, not the best. The Poltergeist remake, Don't Breathe 2. I never saw that one, but I know you did, Luke, and you have
It was not
some
great.
comments on that. Yeah,
I did not
not,
enjoy it at all, to be
not
honest.
fantastic.
But like for me, I guess what I'm most excited about is the story that we're seeing, where we saw the first Terrifier. Not big fans of it. He did come out. Obviously,
Mm,
we've talked about it several times on the channel. It was just showcase kind of proof of concept a little more to dive into the storytelling, and then we got that with Terrifier 2, where we're getting more narrative heavy things, and we're really opening up a lot of windows and in questions to the lore that's established with Art the Clown and everyone else that he's establishing in Terror. So like now seeing that he's being paired with Ghost House Pictures with Sam Raimi, I think a lot of the things that maybe Ghost House has produced in the past maybe was a kind of product of maybe not a clear vision or a love for something, where I feel like Damien Leone probably goes into most of his projects, at least what we've seen with Terrifier, with a great love. So I feel like, that pairing of Damien Leone with Sam Raimi's guidance, maybe in some kind of advice along the way, I think may only be a plus. So I'm really intrigued to see what he's going to be doing. Obviously, there'll be a little bit more money behind this than what he's used to playing with, especially with Terrifier and even with Terrifier 2. And I think there was a big, during that article, I think a lot of people have really focused in on him mentioning Terrifier 3 and saying,
Mhm.
that's either going to be happening before or after Terrifier 3, pretty much confirming that we're getting that third. I mean, we all kind of assumed that we were getting it, but he kind of really made it plain as day, saying we are Terrifier 3. It's just kind of when the projects are going to fall. So, I think this news is exciting on all accounts, where he's definitely going to be getting into bigger and better things, as well as we're going to get that Terrifier 3, at least a third installment in the franchise. But, one of the things that also got me kind of thinking here is, you mentioned, similar background to Sam Raimi. It could be intriguing to ever see if we're opening up the Evil Dead universe. I think Damien Leone would be an interesting choice. I don't think there's a horror director out there that probably doesn't have their own Evil Dead pitch. So I could easily seeing these two sitting in a room together, and Damien Leone being like, "Hey, I have this idea that I would do for the Evil Dead." So it's like we could be kind of going off into multiple different universes with the Evil Dead franchise, and Damien Leone, I think, would be a great pick to do one of those films.
I agree. I definitely like Damien Leone working with Raimi. I think that that's a great bond. Like I said, I think they share that kinship. But really coming away from this, all I can say is that I hope the Terrifier 3 comes first. I think that they need to strike while the iron is still hot on that. And if we can get it in 2 years or so, I think they could have another bona fide success on their hands, especially if they keep it at the quality of a Terrifier 2. But hey, we all knew that Damien Leone was going to have a pretty lengthy and great career after the success of Terrifier 2. So let's hope that we see some collaboration with Sam Raimi, maybe some collaboration with James Wan and the other greats in Hollywood as we continue.
Definitely
But
interesting.
let's move on to our next story here. Just a little sidestep from what we talked about earlier this week. We did have a video talking about the DC announcements where we discussed Swamp Thing. Mostly that. We also talked about the other animated project that it was like Creature Commandos, I think it was,
Yep.
from James Gunn there. But Swamp Thing was mainly what we focused on. So that video is up on the channel now if you want to check it out. But to kind of piggyback off of that, just a small little story. There's not much here to talk about. It wasn't like it was, super heavily, dove into the rabbit hole of saying anything's actually happening. But it is interesting that a name that got brought up, because we talked potential directors, things like that, people coming back to it, and everything. I said James Wan was like kind of the lock seal, but I did not anticipate James Mangold getting brought up. But that seems to be the case from what rumors are saying, because on his Twitter, he started posting images of Swamp Thing and all kinds of great stuff. So it does seem like maybe this is the direction they're headed. And with James Mangold, having that history with already doing superhero projects like Logan and the Wolverine, and seeing what he did with that, bringing that to an R-rated property, I think he's another great choice. I do like James Mangold. I love Ford v Ferrari. I also really like 310 to Yuma and some of his other projects. Like, he's a very solid director. So I think that having him step in, he's another great choice to add to the list.
Yeah, we discussed it, and we released the video, I think, after the James Mangold news, but we actually recorded it prior. So, again, this for me, like you, wasn't even in my head. It wasn't something that I was seeing him in the video. But like looking at it, I think there is a lot of potential here. I've seen some James Mangold stuff. Ford v Ferrari, Logan, the Wolverine. Is it Wolverine or the Wolverine? I don't know which one he
the
did.
Wolverine.
The Wolverine. Okay. And then Identity is probably one of the things that I gravitated a little more toward, just because I know we're going to go for a little darker tone, as they had mentioned. So he hasn't really dove too much into the horror realm and anything, but I know, like, looking back on his stuff after this was mentioned, and him just talking about Logan and saying, he had a love for that, clearly. And in this article, they mentioned that I believe James Mangold had approached James Gunn and company to say, I do have a pitch for this. And it sounds like he does have a love for the character itself. And then with what he had done with Logan, I believe he co-wrote that, in saying, they need to have their own tones and their own approach to everything. and to kind of look at it as almost a segmented piece, and it doesn't have to fit into the universe. He equated it to making almost like a TV show where, you know, I'm making an episode here, so I'm making it my own. And I think that's really what he would do with Swamp Thing is, regardless of what everyone else is making, I'm going to make my own version of Swamp Thing, give its own feel, and obviously that's what James Gunn wants. So I'm really intrigued to see where they can go with it. I do think he can teeter into that dark horror realm. Obviously, if you've seen Identity, it does have a lot of horror undertones of it. So I'm intrigued to see where this is going to go. I think he will do the aesthetic justice as well. So I'm really intrigued here. Again, this wasn't my pick, but knowing what we know now, I think this can really lead to something very intriguing.
I agree. And I think the fact that James Gunn had even said that Swamp Thing's kind of going to be in its own little pocket for a little while and crossover eventually,
yeah,
I think is a good point to that, where you said that he made Logan kind of his own. That would be a good fit then. So I'm excited for
and
this.
I think this already makes it feel big. Having someone like James Mangold attached to it, I think it's already something where you don't feel like this film's just going to be a throwaway small type of theatrical release. I feel like it's giving it the due that it deserves.
No, absolutely. I mean, the guy's got the next Indiana Jones coming out this summer, so that's a huge one under his belt. So we'll see how that performs. I am optimistic about it, even though the internet likes to be cynical. So we'll see. James Mangold on Swamp Thing. I'm down for it. But let's move on to the next story here, kind of shotgunning through some of these. We're talking Fallout with Devon Sawa and Kate Bosworth, starring in this survival thriller. Now, I didn't really get a whole lot of time to look into this, so Luke, you're kind of the more of the expert on this, but it does sound like it'd be a pretty interesting, like they say, thriller involving one of your favorites, Devon Sawa.
Yes, this is true. I want to deem myself too much of an expert on this one. I did read the article. So it just seems like, you know, Devon Sawa's in it, Tyrese Gibson. There's a couple of other people attached to this one are going to basically be in an underground bunker that's malfunctioning. So they're losing oxygen, you know, obviously food, everything like that. And tensions are just going to be high. So, and it does say, I think there was another darker element that's going to be dropped into here. They don't specify in the little release there as to what that's going to be. So I don't know if it's going to be like, you know, a murderer in the midst or anything like that. I'm intrigued to see what's going to happen here. I would love for this to turn out to randomly be some sort of weird creature feature if we are dealing with nuclear fallout and something gets in. I don't know if that would ever be the case. But and seeing Devon Sawa in something, really diving deeper into the horror roots here. I have a huge love for Idle Hands, and then having him, you know, in that space, and then kind of just not really doing too much for a long while, and then, you know, getting into Chucky. He did Black Friday. He's doing a couple other things. I do love seeing him back, and I love that he's getting more roles. So, you know, Devon Sawa being part of this is really the big vehicle for me to go see this, because we all love his performances in Chucky, I think. So to kind of see him branching out and getting more horror properties, it's always a plus.
Oh yeah, and you know, I've recently gotten more involved with Devon Sawa, especially with the Chucky series. I think he's a very charismatic actor. But I'm excited to see this kind of a concept go through here with the kind of being stuck in a fallout shelter. You do mention there could be a little bit of a sinister element to it. With it says here that there's more of a sinister plan afoot. So I'm curious to see where it goes. You know, I'm curious to also know if this is going to end up in theaters. It'll probably be more of a streaming vehicle.
I think so.
Is what it seems like, which is fine. But yeah, I think that this could be a good bit of fun. I know when you sent me the list of stories and this covering Devon Sawa, I was like, well, I got to throw this bone in there for Luke, because it's like he's definitely, you know, hot on this guy. And I understand why. Like I said, it's one of those things where it's like you do the films you've talked about and his performance in Chucky. Again, very charismatic dude. I want to see him kind of start to kind of remake that climb a little bit and maybe get into some bigger picture stuff as things move on here. But I think this could be a good bit of fun. The only thing that I would say that I think they need to change the name possibly is because I feel like this will mislead people to thinking this could be related to the Fallout universe,
Yeah.
video games
It'll
wise.
garner an audience that doesn't technically exist because it's not
Mm.
part of the actual gaming franchise. So I agree as well. Hopefully they do change it by the time this does come out, because I don't think you need to have something called Fallout out there in that space. But having Devin Sawa back in the horror community like this and branching out, I think it's only good things. I think he can really be a mainstay in the horror community, and for the next decade plus, just randomly popping up in horror properties as a cameo, as well as being the leading man in a lot of horror properties as well.
100%. But alrighty, moving on to another pop-up in horror properties, Kevin Bacon waiting to return for a new Tremors movie. So yeah, I saw this tweet when it happened live. We follow the Tremors guys on Twitter, Tremors Saga.
Tremors Saga.
Yeah, so like they're very active on there. And it's one of those things where they're very nice people. We've interacted with them a couple of times, especially when we covered Tremors 2. Yeah. But they were even taken aback by this a little bit because obviously in this tweet someone said seeing this on the Shazam trailer makes me really want to see a new Tremors movie. This isn't direct to DVD. Kevin Bacon, what's going to happen here or whatever. And he responded with, I'm just waiting for the call. So it's just one of those things where it's like, I wonder where the disconnect is. Maybe they just don't communicate very often. I don't know where the rights are with Tremors. We probably have to have the guys from Tremors Saga come on here and maybe explain that a little better to us of what's going on with Tremors at the moment. Because I know they have those direct to DVD films with Michael Gross and everything. I know there was that series back in 2016, 17 that was supposed to come out. Yeah, and that looked really promising. I mean, having him come back and everything, and then it never got ordered. So it's like, that's very disappointing. I'd love to hear more about that. But yeah, I think if there's any time to do it, it'd be now. I think like a lot of stuff like Tremors is held in such high regard with a lot of people, and just to have one of the main actors, unfortunately, one of the only main actors of the pair alive, to come back and do this would be exciting. I'd love that.
Yeah, and for me, I think maybe the disconnect lies with, I believe when that TV series, they did the one episode there. I believe maybe it was an expense issue, and I feel like maybe that's where it still lies here, where it's easier to, maybe Michael Gross is a little bit different price point than Kevin Bacon, adding him something, so it might be a little bit easier to do, Tremors 17 and do a CGI, graboid and everything, and then cast Michael Gross as opposed to doing a practical effect Kevin Bacon film. So, especially where the Tremors property is currently. So, I mean, like, this is something I'm clamoring for. I hope we get something with Kevin Bacon in the Tremors franchise. And I think there's a lot left in that tank to really get more mileage out of. I mean, I think there's a pretty decent audience for the Tremors franchise, especially the first and second one. So, even if you did a direct sequel to, maybe I would even include that second one to kind of, do the Shriekers as well, I think would be interesting. And then, obviously Fred Ward unfortunately will not be able to reprise his role, but, make mention of him in that, and then just have kind of Kevin Bacon, and I would even put Michael Gross back in it as well. I think
I was just about to say, I think I'll bring them back, maybe even Reba McEntire coming back to reprise her role. Very fun. And you keep the continuity of 2, so her and Michael Gross meeting up for the first time. This is the kind of legacy sequel we need. All right, this is what I want.
And I think, I mean, getting Kevin Bacon back in the Tremors franchise, I think can really be a course correct, because he clearly has a love for it. I mean, after all these years, we've heard him talk about it. He wants to be in it. And when you have a guy at the caliber of Kevin Bacon's level here, you don't throw that away. So I think they do have to get this all together, make a solid script, get everyone back on board, because, Kevin Bacon's a guy that I feel like you wouldn't get him back for just one. I feel like he's got enough love for this that if you wanted to tell like a 3-story arc, that you could get him back for 3 films, and there's a built-in audience. The horror community is going to be there regardless. I don't know if like a general audience would, I think maybe you could catch them onto it. But I know at least you would have that horror community ready and raring to go to see Kevin Bacon back in the Tremors franchise.
I couldn't agree more. I think that definitely if Kevin Bacon signs on, you get maybe a few other of those original cast members back in here. I would definitely see this being a great summer horror thriller box office bomb, like not bomb, but explosion. I think a lot of people would be into that, or even if it's like an early spring kind of thing. Have people come in, like, you know, it's just getting warm out. I think that this would really drive people to the theaters to see it. And I mean, I don't see why they're not doing anything with the franchise. Again, we got to find out what's going on with the rights there, because I know Universal has their whole films going on. And then from what it sounds like, the people who have ownership of the originals, they must be able to do something. I don't know. So
Yeah.
we'll have to see what's going on there. But yeah, since we're just spitballing here, I know we're going to wrap everything up in a second, but with Shazam Fury of the Gods being what kind of spawned this off, maybe we get David F. Sandberg behind this. I don't know. Does that seem like his kind of bag for this? I don't know. If he's a Tremors fan, it could be fun, but I think he has a good balance of comedy and horror that it could work out.
I think so too. I think he would be the voice, one of the voices I think could really do this franchise justice, and to kind of having his name attached to this as well as Kevin Bacon could really give Tremors back the prominence that it had during that first film, in the theater, and a lot of people really gravitating toward it. Now, we do have a little thing here on the channel, and I'm just spitballing again. We did a little something with Silent Night, Deadly Nights around Christmas time. I think maybe in the future, if we can pencil it in, we could do Splattercast presents Tremors 3.
I think that would be a lot of fun. You've got my brain twisted now. It's in the books. We got a couple of those that we got planned.
Yep.
We had a lot of fun going on, but yeah, I think we could do a little reboot picking up after 2 and see where it goes.
It's gonna be a lot of fun.
Alrighty, guys. Well, that's going to wrap us up here on this week's episode of the Sunday Scaries. A little shorter than normal. We unfortunately do have some commitments we got to get to, so we had to kind of shotgun through this thing. But hey, it was a lot of fun talking these news stories. It was a good week. I mean, Luke was right. There was 9 stories. We had to pick 4 of them. So I did want to mention off the top here, just to have a little bit of a say to it, is George P. Wilbur, most well known for portraying Michael Myers in Halloween 4, did unfortunately pass away the other day. What was that? Was that Thursday? Yeah, it was Thursday.
I believe it was. Yep.
Yeah. So very sad stuff. Obviously we sung his praises quite a bit on our Halloween 4 watch along.
Yes.
And I'm sure we will get to talk about him quite a bit more, because we are going to be watching Halloweens 4, 5, and 6 and reviewing them this October again to continue on with that series. So it's unfortunate. It is a part of life, but yeah, he will be missed. And yeah, he'll always have that iconic portrayal of Michael under his belt.
Absolutely. And I mean, it's no secret that, Halloween 4 is one of our favorites in the franchise. And, regardless of what the mask looks like, a great performance of Michael Myers in Halloween 4. So always horrible to hear that type of news, but at least he's, his legacy is going to live on in countless rewatches of Halloween 4 and reviews and the action figures and things like that. So at least we got a great performance.
I couldn't agree more. But alrighty, guys, I guess that's going to wrap us up here for the Sunday Scaries. So if you're new here and you're just discovering us, please hit that subscribe button. We're on our way to 1,000 subscribers before we hit our year mark in May. That would be the goal. And yeah, other than that, we got a lot of great stuff coming to the channel. Lots of fun stuff coming this week. We can't wait to get it out there. If you saw our review for The Outwaters, we do have an interview with Robbie Banfish coming on the 9th. So that'll be on Friday, I believe. Yeah, Friday. So you'll be able to check that out. And of course, we have a lot of great stuff. Our Knock at the Cabin review is up. We talk a little bit more Swamp Thing in a kind of a joint video earlier this week, where we go in depth on that and Creature Commandos. Yeah, and of course, more content on the way. So definitely keep an eye out for that. So I guess until next time, I'm Dylan Newell.
And I'm Luke Janesco.
And remember, stay scared.